Hey, what's up everyone? My name's Chris Winter, and in this video I'm going to make a comparison video between three very popular cameras. Firstly, the Canon T6i and T6s, also the brand new Canon 80D, and at the top of the line we've also got the Canon 7D Mark II. Now if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure to do it because I'm actually going to be giving away either a Canon 80D or a Sony a6300 to a subscriber, so hit that subscribe button to enter. And guys, also definitely make sure to check out my brand new list, the top 5 must-have DSLR lenses. I think you'll be a little bit surprised at what comes in at number 1. Anyway, I'll put a link in the description box below under this video and you can check it out. But anyway, let's compare these three cameras. So to start off this comparison, I want to first take a look at the build quality and the features of these three cameras. So all of these cameras are targeting different markets, and you can really tell that even just by the size of the bodies. Now on the small end, we've got the Canon T6i or T6s, which is far smaller than the 80D and the 7D Mark II. When you put it next to the 7D, it's really dwarfed in size. Next up, we've got the Canon 80D, which to me is really the sweet spot for a DSLR. It's got enough weight to be able to handle most lenses, but isn't too heavy that you want to leave it at home all the time. And the largest size we've got is the 7D Mark II. It's a really solid camera and it's also fully weatherproof, so it's a really good option if you're going to be working in tough environments. Now all three of these cameras have pretty similar ergonomics, but if you do have smaller hands, I'd probably be looking towards the T6i and the 80D. Now on top of both the 80D and the 7D Mark II is a top LCD screen, which is actually really great. Now the T6i doesn't have one, but the T6s on the other hand does. Now it might not seem like a big deal, but being able to see your settings on the fly is a really nice feature. So overall, if you're looking for a great camera to travel with, the winner here is going to be the T6i and the T6s because it's a little bit smaller. If you're looking for a pro-built camera that can take a lot of hits, go for the 7D Mark II. And if you want to go for the best of both worlds, I'd go for the Canon 80D. And guys, if you want to see some sample images that I've taken comparing all three of these cameras, make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'll put a link in the description box below and you can check them out. But anyway, let's get back to this review. Now another thing that you should take into consideration with these three cameras is their LCD screens on the back. Now both the 80D and the T6i have fully articulating screens, which are fantastic. They're so useful for really composing your shot, especially if you're down low or up high. They're also touch screens as well, which just makes them that much better. Now the 7D Mark II has what feels like a bit of an archaic LCD screen on the back here. It's not a touch screen and you can't flip it out, not even up or down. Now to be fair, before I actually used a touch articulating screen, I wouldn't really have cared much about it and I would have thought it's a little bit of a gimmick. But since I have now used it for about 3 years, to be totally honest, I wouldn't go back and I'd love to see it move over to the 7D range. So let's talk about the burst mode on all of these cameras now. If you're looking to get into the world of sports photography, I'd be looking at either the 80D or the 7D. Now the 7D Mark II has the highest burst rate of all of the cameras with a pretty impressive 10 frames per second. Now that's great if you want to catch some fast moving sports or wildlife. Now the 80D isn't too bad either and can shoot around 7 frames per second, and on the other end, we've got the T6i and the T6s, which can only shoot at about 5 frames per second. Now to be fair, that's going to be fast enough for most users in most shooting environments. But if you do know that you're going to be needing to capture quite a lot of photos in a short succession, I'd be looking at these two cameras here. So let's see it in action now. Here's 5 frames per second and 7 frames per second on the 80D. And why not, let's listen to the 7D Mark II, 10 frames per second. Bit of a machine gun right there. So if you do know that you're going to be shooting sports, I'd be looking at the 7D or the 80D. So in terms of real-world autofocus performance, the real standout here is the 7D Mark II. It's incredibly quick. I can't really fault it. Now that's not to say that the Canon 80D isn't a fast autofocusing camera. It's really hot on the heels of the 7D Mark II, slightly slower, but still works really well for most situations. Now the T6i and the T6s are also a little bit slower again, but to be totally honest, for most people, this is going to be fast enough in pretty much every situation, unless you're going to be shooting really fast moving things. So let's talk about these cameras now for video work. Now I actually filmed on the Canon T6s quite a lot last year, and I was actually really impressed. For a sub $1,000 camera, its video quality was nearly as good as my Canon 70D. Now the T6i and the T6s have something called hybrid autofocusing, and it works really quite well. Now it's not at the same level as the dual pixel on the 70D, and definitely not at the same level as the 80D's autofocus, but it does work pretty well, especially for the price. Now the 7D Mark II is also rocking a dual pixel autofocus sensor, and I did find it worked just as well as the other cameras. It's really responsive as well, but I did find that it was a lot harder to use as I had to use this little joystick to select where I wanted to focus. The The 80D was the best out of all three and worked flawlessly pretty much all of the time. Not only that though, it's just so easy to select your focus point by simply touching on the screen, and I know a lot of people are really impressed by this feature. Now both the 80D and the 7D Mark II now have a headphone jack, which is fantastic and actually a really important addition. And if you're going to be recording really good quality audio, it's definitely something to consider. To me, it's a bit of a pity that the T6i and the T6s don't have a headphone jack. The T6s and the 80D both have HDR video mode, which might sound a little bit like a gimmick, but it actually works really quite well, and getting a little bit more dynamic range in your videos is never a bad thing. The 7D Mark II and the 80D can both record 1080p video at 60 frames per second, which is nice to see, but something to consider is that the 7D Mark II can only record this in manual focus mode, whereas the newer 80D can actually still use its dual pixel autofocus. Other than that, the 80D now has time-lapse built in, which is really fun and actually really well implemented. So in terms of the winner for video work, unless you're on a really tight budget, I'd be looking to go for the Canon 80D for pretty much everyone. So now let's talk about something that's probably pretty important to you, and it's also important to me, and that's price and value for money. The T6i starts off at $750, with the T6s, the bigger brother with the top LCD screen, coming in at $850. Now for me, that's actually a really good price for a beginner DSLR. You're getting a lot of the features from the higher priced DSLRs in a smaller and easier to learn body. Now the 80D comes in at about $1,200, which is where I think it should be. For me, this is the best value out of all three of these cameras. Now it's got pro level autofocus and features and doesn't cost as much as most higher priced competitors. I still would have liked to have seen it have 4K at $1,200 though, but even without it, it's still good value. And at the pointy end, we've got the 7D Mark II, which comes in at around about $1,500. That's actually had a price cut since it was originally launched, and is also pretty good considering its very impressive autofocus system. So the big question is, which one should you buy? Well, for me, I think that if you're looking for a beginner DSLR that you want to learn on, or if you're looking for a lightweight camera to travel with and you don't take a lot of video, I'd be looking at the T6i and the T6s. If you know you're going to be shooting a lot of sports and wildlife and that's your passion, or you know that you're going to be a little bit rougher on your camera, I'd still be going for the 7D Mark II. And for pretty much everyone else, I'd still be going for the Canon 80D. I think it's going to be this year's best value camera and also probably one of the most popular DSLRs from Canon. So that was a little bit of a comparison between these three cameras. Hopefully I did help a little bit and you got something out of it. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up because that's always appreciated. And also make sure to check out my top 5 best value DSLRs from Canon. I'll put a link in the description box below and you can check it out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day and I'll see you next time. Bye.